welcome to the Biotope Aquarium Project webinar. I just want to do a little check here to see if everyone can hear me clearly, if sound is checked, if anyone can just comment in the chat. All right. Okay, today we have Russell Tate, who is an eco-toxicologist, aquatic eco-toxicologist and hydrologist. He has a great deal of experience with Central and West African biotopes, and as well as South African biotopes. And he's going to do an overview of some of these for us today. So today we are breaking this into two parts. First is going to be the South African section with the Upper Zambezi. We will then pause for a few questions, which you can put into the chat. Then we will move on to the West and Central African section. Once again, we will pause for some chat, some questions and chat, and then in the end, we will have a formal question and answer period. So without further ado, I'm going to pass on the presentation to Russell Tate.
There you go. All right, guys, and girls, again, thank you very much. It's my absolute pleasure to be, speaking to everybody today or tonight or, this morning, wherever you guys are. Essentially a little introduction to myself. My name's Russell Tate. I'm broadly classified as a water resource scientist. My primary essential studies have been around eco-toxicology, which is essentially the effect of water chemistry on aquatic organisms, looking at the influence of, let's say, metals on fish, as an example. That's pretty much what the eco-toxicologist role entails. I have also recently been expanding my interests into hydrology. Naturally, water quantity has a massive influence on the water chemistry. So you have to be well versed in both aspects to understand aquatic health, and essentially that is ecological quality. That's the overall goal here, is to be able to understand how developments will have an impact on the ecological quality. And I do so by essentially undertaking these ecotoxicologist and hydrology roles. On top of this, because of my role as the ecotoxicologist, I generally need to understand exactly what is going on in the environment and what organisms are there. And essentially, this is exactly what I'm going to be sharing with you guys, kind of what you find in these places while I'm doing my ecotoxicology and hydrology work. And in this case, today, we're going to be talking about, or right now, we're going to be talking about the Upper Zambezi river system. That'll be the first presentation. Michael did give some brief background. The next presentation would be on Central and, West Central Africa. And we'll get into the details exactly where these regions are. But for now, we're going to start with the Upper Zambezi. And here you can see very clearly, I'm hoping guys can see very clearly.
We see it very clear, yes.
There you go, great, thank you. Essentially where we're going to be looking today, I know there isn't too much information around biotopes and stuff, related to the aquaristic hobby. And essentially that's the kind of information I'm going to be trying to provide to you guys. I know that, Europe and probably a few other countries do have some fish from this location. So, in light of the whole biotope aquarium, imitation, trying to get the aquariums to look as similar to the aquatic environment as possible, it's great to have first-hand information from people who've actually been to these areas.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of what I'm trying to show to you guys. Yeah, that's it. So essentially we're in Southern Africa, and we're in the upper Zambezi, which is essentially the area upstream of the Zambezi. Let me just see if I can close this. Sorry, I've just got something in my way. So essentially this is the area upstream of the Victoria Falls, all the way up to the Zambian and Angolan highlands. That's essentially the area classified as the upper Zambezi. The upper Zambezi has a separate fish fauna to the lower Zambezi. So the fish downstream of the Victoria Falls, the fish community, are largely different to the fish found upstream of the falls. So very interesting area. The zoo geography of this area was historically connected to the Atlantic Ocean. You know, evidence is suggesting that the river used to actually flow and have an outlet in the Atlantic. It currently exits the continent in the Indian Ocean. So essentially what that means is that you have a very nice mixture of different fish fauna. So the upper Zambezi historically connected to the Atlantic Ocean, and also connected to some degree in the upper Kasai area and essentially the southern tributaries of the Congo River. So you also have a nice mixture of Congo species. And without a doubt, we are still investigating this, you know, this fish community. We're finding more and more links as we go along between these systems. And yeah, we'll show some of those today, I guess, maybe one or two examples.
Sure.
But yes, so essentially this is the area that we're looking at. It's separated, it's situated in basically on the border zone between Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. It's one of my favorite places to visit. And on this occasion, the presentation that I'm giving, it was actually a holiday. We're very passionate about our aquatic ecosystem. So even during holidays, we'll you know, see what fish there are, you know, in the rivers. It's definitely a massive passion of ours. Myself and my wife, excuse me, we love it. So we come to this region once a year, and essentially that time period where we come up to this area is usually around March, April, and this graph is essentially a hydrograph, and it shows the flow in the river over the hydrological year. So between October and September in this catchment. And essentially you can see every year between, let's say, I want to say probably February to May, you have a very high increase in discharge in the Zambezi River. And essentially what this has done is this creates this, every year, this absolutely fantastic flooded aquatic environment. It's a great, you know, it's kind of where the aquatic environment takes over the terrestrial environment, which we absolutely love, because it's great to see the interactions between the terrestrial and the aquatic environment. So essentially here's some you know, photographs. This one is in the Quando River system, and the lower reaches of that. And you can see that this is a huge floodplain driven river system, a lot of deposition of nice fine material, very clear water, a lot of aquatic vegetation, the perfect example of a floodplain. Lower down in the Chobe River, here again you see the expanse of this floodplain during this period. You know, during the, let's say, March, April period. And when this area comes into, let's say, December, you'll be left with a very shallow little channel here. Well, maybe not necessarily shallow, but all this water reduces. So essentially when this type of habitat forms, this beautiful floodplain habitat, it's inhabited by very, very nice fishes. which we're going to be going through shortly. So essentially, just to touch on before we get more into the fish, where are we? We're in the Zambezian ecological province. That's this big one, number 8. And as I've said, there's some influence from the Congo Basin, and this kind of fauna goes all the way into South Africa as well. So a really rich diversity of fish, lots of cyprinids and lots of cichlids, which we'll hopefully get through. In any case, this is what the main channels kind of look like. You have these very deep this is during the flood period, but incredibly green and lush and yeah, just a very clean system. That's the best way I can describe it. The turbidity of these areas is incredibly low, just because of the very fine sediments which have already settled out, and the amount of aquatic vegetation which is filtering these systems. Now, we typically don't focus on these kind of areas, and that's for just purely because of the reason that it's incredibly dangerous to wander in these type of waters. The deep channels, places anywhere deeper than your knee is really a danger to your health and safety. So we would typically only do this kind of work when we've got we'd only really sample a deep river like that when we've got a proper expedition team set up, with proper boats, experienced guides, that sort of thing. When we're going up for holiday though, and I'd obviously encourage you guys to come here for a holiday. It's fantastic, particularly for aquarists, lovers. I'm just going to accept guys in here. I don't know if that's the right protocol. Is that's okay? I'm assuming it is. So essentially, so we stay out of the I don't know why it's not going to my next slide here. There we go. So we stay out of the deeper water, and we focus on the smaller stuff. So essentially, this is the let me just get my cool pointer again. This is the area where we're going to be focusing now. I showed you some photographs of the Quando River. You can see that the river enters this big delta, and this is referred to as the Lignati Swamps. And you will also notice that that there's a channel almost connecting the Quando Delta to the Lignati Swamps. So they say that these areas are quite they're very similar in their aquatic habitats. Okay. So I personally haven't been to the Delta yet, but I need someone to corroborate that, but I've heard that they're similar. So essentially, this is an incredibly wetland area. It's actually a delta, and within this delta, there are several secondary channels, and that's the place that we like to work because. Sorry, I went a bit early. That's the place we like to work, and I guess we'll get into that in a bit. So this is typically how we get around. We drive up from South Africa. It's about a 2-day drive to get up here, and you need a 4x4. I know the Jimny's small, but it's quite a capable little vehicle. We haven't had too many issues yet, and yeah, this is a wild area. So on your drives, you will see wild animals, lions, elephants, that sort of stuff. You do see them. It also makes the camping a little bit more exciting. But typically, when you're in these type of areas, you're in a wild place, and you're going to encounter some beautiful aquatic biodiversity. So yeah, we look at one of the secondary channels that I was telling you about in the Quando Delta. Essentially, what happens when the Quando River reaches a certain height, the water level during the flood, it empties over into these flood channels. And then these flood channels then flood themselves. Now, this photo was taken in March, April 2018. So that was when we'll have a look now. When we returned in 2019, it was an incredible phenomenon. And there was actually a drought. So here you can see on the left is the 2018 flood, and on the right, the 2019 no flood. It was actually quite remarkable. This flood is obviously super important for providing habitat for, I mean, these type of habitats like this for spawning fish. And I'll touch on that in a bit, I suppose. So when the floods didn't come, there's also a lot of flood recession agriculture that is taking place in this type of area. So when the floods didn't come, there was, you know, a lot of hungry people and not such a good fish harvest because of the lack of flooded, inundated habitat. So it was really incredible to see, you know, the stark contrast, looking at the exact same, you know, period within the hydrological year. So in any case, just to show you kind of exactly what happened. So this black line is the 2018-2019 photo. This is when this photo was taken. Whereas the previous year, which was 2017-2018 hydrological year, you can see the massive difference in flood peak there. And that's what happened. You know, this is what it looks like visually. And, you know, I've kind of briefly touched on what kind of impact that has on the local people too. When it does flood, this area is spectacular. It's lush. Most of the margins are completely flooded, so it's got wetland plants. Another way to describe it is open. It's open and productive. You know, in comparison to the Central West African stuff, which I'm going to show you guys later, those are usually completely covered over by riparian vegetation. Where in this case it's open. It's a beautiful open floodplain channel system. So if we have a closer look at this this little river system, it's actually called the Harubandi Channel. My pronunciation might not be correct, but the first thing that you see in these type of channels is you know, along the channel edge is your beautiful lilies. And the Quando Delta, this upper Zambezi area, is renowned for its beautiful lilies. I mean, you can see that they're pretty much across the entire channel. If you look on the margins, you know, typical of a floodplain system, you got your floodplain grasses. Well, I won't get too much into that. And then you get your wetland plants like your Persicaria and your Typha capensis over here. We'll get into that a bit more now. I'll try to get into the biotope. As I say, the region is renowned for its beautiful lilies. In this case, the blue lotus nymphaea, amongst some other aquatic vegetation, which is much smaller, which we'll get into. There you can see the nymphaea again, the blue lotus, and a nymphoides on the right. These type of nymphoides absolutely thrive in the floodplain systems, and they actually go a yellow color when they mature. But we've tried to cultivate these in an aquarium, and we've been successful. They do grow, so they are beautiful little aquarium plants. Additional plants, the aquatic plants that you find in between the lilies, include this invasive, this is an invasive species. We call it Caribou Weed. I believe the genus name is Salvinia, and essentially it's an invasive species in the Zambezi, and it essentially accumulates in between the aquatic vegetation. Another type of aquatic plant, and these grow in the open channel as well, is your Trappa natans. This is also called a water chestnut. Yes. It actually does produce a kind of nut, I believe, and the guys do actually eat it. So this is what that same channel looked like in that drought period. It was, I know it sounds bad, but we were quite lucky to get this kind of conditions, because it meant that the effectiveness of our, you know, searching in these areas was improved. There were less crocodiles, let's just put it that way. There were more channels that were completely, you know, very shallow. the perfect type of system that you want to be looking for fish in. So yeah, great to see. We look a bit closer into some of the aquatic vegetation that you find in these little pools, and they are dense, very, very dense, densely vegetated pools. And here you've got your bladderwort. Yeah, you must excuse my pronunciation. It's Utricularia gibber, and that's the bladderwort. And on the right, you've got your potamogeron. I don't know what the species of this is. I haven't identified it, but you generally have a decent amount of aquatic vegetation. Going into the channel margins, as you get a bit shallower, you start to have sedges growing out of your water, and emergent sedges mixed with the nymphea as well as the grass. I've tried to cultivate these sedges before, and it's just been really problematic. I haven't actually come right with that. If anybody has ever come right with that, I'd love to have a chat with you. But essentially, as you can see in this channel, these little floodplains here are kind of where all the magic's happening. That's where you've got all your fish cruising around and breeding and feeding on terrestrial stuff that has been trapped and just having a good time in the floodplain. A very productive little area. So it's not all just about the aquatic plants. You also have your marginal vegetation, and in this case, you got your Commelina. I might have pronounced that wrong, and your Polygomphus as well. These are type of marginal plants that grow on the channel edge, but they grow fantastically. You can actually grow these, if you've got a pond or a shallow aquarium, or the guys doing the paludariums, I think they call them. These are great for that. Then we get into the floodplain aquatic vegetation. I believe this is a kind of Ludwigia. I can't confirm that, but these essentially occur in the floodplain between the floodplain grasses, and when they actually are inundated, they become emergent. They become emergent plants, as you can see here. Beautiful emergent plants. So another fantastic aquatic plant in the upper Zambezi, and you can see that the grasses that occur in this area are also adapted to being flooded, I suppose. That's why they call them floodplain grasses. Let me get to my next slide. So in some cases, this is exactly what it looks like underwater in the upper Zambezi. You've got your white sand. That's always a characteristic of the upper Zambezi. I might, I stand to be corrected, but I might be, I believe it's Kalahari Sands is what they refer to it as. And it's a very fine silt. I suppose it's quite similar to, I might get kicked for this, but it might be similar to your substrate that you'd get in the Amazon basin. In this case, it doesn't look that fine because we're on the floodplain, but as you go further in, when there's less detritus over it, I'm sure we'll see in a few slides. So essentially, this is what it looks like. Lots of submerged grasses. This was taken in a clearing. But typically the grasses are a bit more dense. And we have our first fish, and these are opportunistic little guys. They're referred to as, they call them striped robbers. It's a Brycinus, and this is Brycinus lateralis. So this is within your Brycinus longipinus type group, your Lestidae. So I suppose what would be similar in Europe in the aquarium trade would be, or Europe, wherever you guys are, would be, Brycinus longipinus. It would kind of be the closest little family to this. Essentially, this is called your first kind of robber, and it's the striped robber. And the next Lestidae that you get in these kind of floodplain systems is this is actually called Rhabdolestes moanensis. I believe named after the town of Maun in the Quando Delta. And this is referred to as your slender robber. These always are in more flowing water through those grasses. Another fish, which I believe is common in the aquarium trade, would be your Microlestis. You can see that these are all within your Lestidae family. nice little adipose fins on each of them. And then this is called the silver robber, probably a good intermediate size between your Brastinus lateralis, your Rhabdolestes, and then these guys. They're quite sensitive. These Rhabdolestes are almost immediately when you take them out of the water, they start to struggle. They don't do well in transport as well. You know, looking more into the margins of the river again, and going out of those grassy areas, you kind of have a nice, you can clearly see a very good mixture of grasses, Ludwigia and Nymphaea, and obviously your Typha on the left, and some other sedges, Cypericea, that you get in this area. So if someone's looking to do a biotope aquarium of this type of habitat, that's definitely what you've got to include. As stated in the introduction, the cyprinids in this area are incredibly diverse. I'm not entirely sure how many species we're looking at, but there certainly is a wide diversity. And these fish are, you know, they thrive in the floodplain habitats, you know, feeding on small invertebrates, taking chances on maybe some fish fry or something like that. But essentially this is Interomius eutania, Interomius radiatus, Interomius multilineatus, and my favorite, Interomius bifrenatus. You get this fish in South Africa, and it's one of my favorite barbs. All of these little barbs are completely placid in an aquarium tank. I think mostly, and they're all relatively small and are just beautiful little barbs. You know, unfortunately, the technique that I use to take photographs sometimes doesn't actually capture the best of the fish. So if I had to describe it, I mean, this fish has got, they refer to it, the common name is a copper stripe barb, and this stripe that you see is a much more glamorous orange. That's the way I describe it, or copper color, as the name suggests. We go to another type of barb that's found in this habitat type. This is common, very common, I think, in foreign aquariums, Poland and those type of places, I think. And this is Interomius multifasciatus, or fasciatus, excuse me. This is Interomius fasciatus. Yes, definitely. So this is a fantastic little fish. Also occurs within the floodplain, and yeah, I believe that they'd probably stick to the margins. I don't think the fish would want to go into the deeper areas. Some of the other fish species also found within these little isolated pools include these citherins, and you can see we've got two species of citherin here. They look quite similar, and these are nanocharax. So this is your dwarf citherin, and then this is your multi-barred citherin. And as you can see, they look quite similar, but this one is more elongate and has an adipose fin, as opposed to the dwarf citherin, which doesn't have those characteristics. Some of the mammarids that we also find within these little isolated pools that we found. I love isolated pools in Africa because they obviously have less crocodiles. So you'll probably hear me talk a lot about isolated pools. So essentially, this is a stone, they call it a dwarf stone basher, I believe, Polymyrus species. And here you also have your Marcosinius species. These are generally found more in the open water, but you know, they will come into the floodplains as well. Looking more into these, you know, I'm going to say thankfully isolated pools. As I say, with the reduced flood, you could really get into these things, and we found a lot of fish in this. These type of habitats are perfect for your cichlids. As I said, the cichlid diversity in the Zambezian, you know, ecoregion, the upper Zambezi freshwater ecoregion is high, is very high, and you know, we'll see some of that today. Well, now. And so here you've got your Coptodon rendali, your red breast tilapia. These get much more brilliantly colored than what my photographs say, unfortunately, but they're my photographs, so I'm happy to share them. And then you have another species which is fairly common in your markets. You have Tilapia spalmani, also a really nice little fish that we also get back here in South Africa, and I've kept a few. They're really great and colorful little guys. But yes, more cichlids. We're going to be spending some time on cichlids. This is I think it's listed as vulnerable or near threatened on the IUCN database. This is Hemichromis andersoni, otherwise referred to as the 3-spot. It may look like more than 3 spots, but generally it's the 3-spot tilapia, or 3-spot gurper is the other name for it. And essentially, this fish is threatened by hybridization with Hemichromis niloticus. So unfortunately, introductions of Hemichromis niloticus, now tilapia in the upper Zambezi, is threatening the species with hybridization. So we hope to, monitor this and just make sure that we have still some of these left. In any case, these get really big, and the local fishermen love these. This is definitely a big target for local fishermen. Another fish found in the floodplains is your Hemichromis Elongators. This species is quite widely distributed, and it also has wide habitat preferences, and is quite an aggressive fish. I find, I would imagine. I think I hear that it's an aggressive fish. I've never kept it, but I have kept some other Hemichromis that can be quite nasty. So I'm assuming this guy would be pretty bad, but pretty good looking. So it might be worth it. Another interesting fish is this Sago Chromas. This is Sago Chromas green woody, and these fish absolutely thrive in the dense vegetation that you get on the floodplains. This fish is a female mouth brooder, and yeah, your typical floodplain specialist fish. Another fish found in kind of a wide diversity of habitats. This one was actually, I can't remember. I've caught this fish in rapids before, as well as on the floodplains and these little isolated pools. So this is a Ceranochromis Macrocephalus, and yeah, another one of the great cichlids that you get in the upper Zambezi. And yeah, I'm assuming that this is also a predator as well. So probably not the best tank mate. Another definite predator is your Ceranochromis angusticeps. This is renowned for being a fierce predator in the floodplains. Unfortunately, I didn't get any more of the Ceranochromis, and I haven't shared any more. But you do find some more beautiful cichlids as well as Ceranochromis out on the floodplains. We're just going to have to go back and find some more. Within these little systems as well, you get your top minnows. So we're really dealing with the whole, fish community here, from cichlids to cyprinids to citharins to catfish. We'll get into that a bit later, and your top minnow. And in this case, we've got 2 species which we found, and that is Johnson's top minnow and your mesh scale top minnow. There's a lot of work happening in the upper Zambezi, and they're going to be finding a few more, I'm certain. So essentially, between fishing and having a look at the aquatic habitats, we always find time to visit the local pubs, or go catch some food with some nice cichlids in the floodplains as well. We'd only really do this in a place with the permission from the local village. Maybe we, sometimes we go to the pub and then to the local chief to get permission to go and catch fish. It's incredibly important in anywhere in Africa that you engage with the local community before going out and catching fish in a big net like this.
Absolutely, yes.
So, but in any case, these guys, they're very nice people, and generally this is there's also a few great things to see around the rivers. This is in a national park as well, well, adjacent to national park. So there's lions and everything rolling around. So we moved from here. I need to speed up a lot. So we moved from this area here, Lignati, we go up to Ingonio Falls. This is a photo taken at Lake Zambezi. We unfortunately didn't sample that, but yeah, I'd love to have a look at it. An incredibly interesting fauna. The lake actually can receive on very high flows and actually receive water directly from the Zambezi. So not necessarily from the Quando system, Chobe system, but directly from the Zambezi too, which makes it really interesting. And it actually did receive water fairly recently. So there's a lot of interesting studies that have taken place on this, you know, tracking the fish communities, what happens when it floods. I just encourage you to read up about it. So essentially now we've made our ways to, sorry, I've gone back and forth a lot of times. Don't get concerned there, sorry.
No problem.
So we now go to Ingonio Falls.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's essentially the second waterfall on the Zambezi, other than the Victoria Falls. It's lesser known. So essentially this is the falls. It's an area that stretches like this. That's where the actual falls are, that's where they are. And the Zambezi is actually channeled through this one main channel. So you can imagine all of this water going through this very, very confined channel. It produces incredibly turbid water, and it's fantastic to witness the power of that hydrology, that water, that moving water. Essentially, this is usually flooded, during the high flow period, except we went when it was at massive drought. And here you can see the nice deposition of the Kalahari Sands. And this stuff actually squeaks when you walk on it. Yeah, it's just really, it's like your own private beach when you go and visit this place. But yeah, you'd probably have to go in the low flow. I think we were very lucky to actually be able to see that. So here's just a close-up of the falls. This is actually the falls themselves. Not too much fish movement going up there during the low flow, but apparently in the high flow period, the real one, this is completely inundated and the fish can move up. Just some more shots of the falls. This is, just to show the power of this river. This area is also not really too well known, so it's interesting to at least talk about another waterfall on the Zambezi that's not the Vic Falls. So in these very nice rapids and these very deep, hydraulic channels, you get the prime predator, your Hydrosinus vittatus. This is a prized angling species, and they get really big, sometimes 5-6 kilograms. I believe maybe even bigger, but I don't want to talk too much nonsense. I think they do get up to about 10 kgs. I've never seen one. This is generally the size that I catch, small ones, but they're a beautiful fish. They love the flowing water, and a supreme predator at that. So essentially, we didn't sample the open channels. We stay away from those, as you know, and we looked at these little channels coming off the waterfalls, basically, little secondary channels coming off that primary channel. And these have got beautifully clear water, and for the first time, aquatic vegetation in the rocky clear areas. And this is what that looks like underwater. I am clueless when it comes to what this aquatic plant is. It seems to only grow on the rocky areas. Yeah, I don't think it's been successfully propagated. It seems to need the flowing water. On the right, you have what looks like another kind of Ludwigia, but just kind of showcasing, what the aquatic habitat does look like. And there are actually aquatic plants now when you get to this area. I think this is called Naja horridus, another kind of aquatic plant. And then a nice mixture of that weird, I don't even know where to begin with that. So I'll take, notes after this. we'll have to go back, you know, and have another look, as well as your little Ludwigia growing together. It does seem somewhat emergent. I mean, these were very close to the top, and this is pretty much what it looks like from the surface. In this habitat type, you get your rheophilic fish. In this case, you get your northern barred minnow. This is an Opsiridium, an incredibly aggressive little fish, feeding on other, it's a predator. And I actually caught this fish twice on, I believe, on a fly rod. In any case, the bottom fish is another, well, I just wanted to actually say this is endemic to the upper Zambezi, and this is also endemic to the upper Zambezi. This is Labio lunatus, yeah, endemic to the upper Zambezi. Another labio that occurs in another rheophilic labio is your Labio cylindricus. I'm checking the time. I've gone way over, so I do apologize. I've still got a lot of slides.
No problem.
In the main channel, I didn't want to, you know, not talk about these. Your catfish, I had to talk about those. There are numerous species of Sonodontos catfish, and they've got complex, you know, community, they're a complex species group. So these are still being sorted out. You also get your mormarids in the open channel. This is, I believe, Petrocephalus catastoma, and this is Mormaris lucerda, the upper Zambezi Cornish jack, I think. And these get quite big. The guys like to eat them. And I just wanted, this is the last biotope I'm going to show. I had to. So essentially, this is a channel that's flowing into the Barotse floodplain. And this is something that occurs in a dambo. It's called a dambo. And essentially, it's an area or a catchment that's just, it has a very consistent water elevation. So what that means is that throughout the year, you have a relatively constant presence of water, and it actually forms these extensive banks of aquatic veg. So this area that I'm outlining here, aquatic vegetation, is all actually submerged, kind of like this. So it's big masses of plant material, particularly floodplain grasses. And this is an incredibly special dambo. Here's just more of the aquatic habitat. You get your bladder wort again. This is it flowering, and your a type of Ludwigia that's also flowering there. I'm hoping I'm not going too quick, but yes, this is the final fish, and this is it's called Neolabias. I think it's Neolabias lonzi, and it's now being changed to Dunducharax because of its similarities to the ones that you are seeing in the DRC catchments, the Congo catchments, the Kasai. So in this case, this is the Angolan species that are found in Lunda Sul, a tributary of the Kasai, and this is you know, it's kind of sister species, Dunducharax as well, lonzi. So this one will be updated in the near future. You can kind of see that these are similar species, and this is not really a Neolabias. So hopefully that'll be changing, you know, in the future. And just to one last, you know, thing about this fish, it obviously enjoys the very dense vegetation, and is incredibly unique in the sense that this has only been found in that location that we took that photo earlier. So this is an endangered species. A lot still going on up in the upper Zambezi. A lot of cool stuff to be found. With habitat types like this, you can imagine, you know, there's going to be a lot more cool stuff to see. I've gone way over, and I've got a whole nother presentation, so I do apologize.
Hi, Russell. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I just wanted to, at this point, ask a few questions that have been coming up from our participants. So I will make it brief, and then we'll move on to the second. Don't worry too much about the strict time limit on this. We can go a bit over. It's okay. I think what you're showing is absolutely amazing. the first time I've seen some of these firsthand. It's absolutely fantastic.
Great
And it's great information for our biotopers. So we have a few questions. One was from the section where you were speaking about the Lignati Swamps. Someone wanted to know, does the rainfall pattern, does the same rainfall pattern there apply to the Barotse floodplain?
I think there would be some connection. It might be slightly different. I'd need to look into it more. Yeah, but pretty much, I mean, if you look at the hydrograph, that was taken in the Zambezi, I think at Katima Malilu, which is, I think, downstream of, no, it's upstream of where the input would come from this area. So, because this would come into the Quando Lignati Swamps would come into the Zambezi via the Chobe River. So that would be upstream from where that hydrograph is. So unfortunately, I can't answer you. I think there might be another hydrograph in the Vic Falls. You might be able to see that. I've heard of, if you visit the website, the Zambezian River Authority, if you Google that, you'll be on the right track. You know, if you do look at the hydrograph, sometimes you do have double peaks. You know, I don't know enough about it to actually give you a great answer. My suggestion would be to go look at the Zambezian River Authority, and you know, let's probably further engage as we go. That's what we're here to do.
So that's great. And we have another question about how far are human settlements from those places around the Lignati Swamps?
So actually quite close. They're actually quite close. This area is the Lignati Swamps is near it's essentially a national park. You know, the southern side of it, it's the Rupara Nkasa National Park. And there's communities on the boundary of that park. So essentially where we stay is a place called Rupara Campsite, and we stay in a community camp. And so essentially that campsite is probably, I'd say, about a half an hour drive on those roads. So probably, I think about 5 kilometers from where we are, there's a community with a pub. So it's a fairly big community.
Right.
Yeah. So
they've got, there's a town there. Okay.